obviously excited to be here. You know, the opportunity to be at Wisconsin as the O-line coach, the tradition here, the history. It was something, and I'm back close to my wife's family, and my family's right close here in the state of Iowa. So back into Big Ten country, can't express really how excited we are as a family to be a part of the history here at Wisconsin, but also to help move it forward and take the jump forward from where we're at right now in the O-line, and help the offense, obviously help the overall team. And as I've gotten to know Luke and Coach Fickle, is his desire, his energy to win, to compete. You know, some of that's his wrestling background. So I'm excited as heck to just be on this path with him on this journey, and you know, help Wisconsin football as we move forward. So
you're going to be the fourth offensive line coach here in 4 seasons for the older guys.
Yeah,
that's probably a challenge. What is the biggest thing you want to impart on them to try to establish the continuity in relationships?
Well, I think the biggest thing, you know, and you mentioned it, is as the fourth O-line coach in 4 years, you're taking over kids who have heard different coaching points, have seen, you know, one offensive change from a coordinator standpoint, I think. So they've been asked to do different things. Honestly, I've talked to the older guys, you know, Jack, Riley, some of the guys that have been here the whole time. And, you know, I've known some of the guys that have coached here. I haven't. I know Styles. I came here to visit and co-coach at times and pick off each other. But I think the biggest thing is those guys understand, and they've actually built a skill set. You know, a lot of guys, if you learn one thing the whole time, you get really good at it. We're probably decent at a number of things. What can we get really good at? And, you know, I think that's the best part, is from a football standpoint. I think from a relationship standpoint, it's no different than being in a different class twice a year. You know, you build a relationship with a professor, you build a relationship with whatever. That's whatever job you work someday, anything. So I think that's, if you hit the ground running and both people are involved, you know, whether it's recruiting or it's coaching, it is about relay. They have to truly know you care, not just have, hey, we're going to have mandatory meals and we're going to do this and I'm going to talk to you from 1 to 1:30 today. It's got to kind of happen naturally and organically. And I think that comes from spending a lot of time with the guys.
This position group has such a rich history here, which I'm sure need to be made aware of. How exciting is that, just to kind of...
Well, I think, you know, you look at, I think they told me it's like 20 guys in 20 years drafted out of that room, 15 in the last 11. You know, 75% of those guys are out of the state of Wisconsin. And so, you know, I've had mentors over my career. If you want to coach a position, go where they grow them. You know, if you want to be a quarterback coach, go Southern California. But if you want to coach offensive line, go to Wisconsin. And I think that's more than anybody in the Big Ten right now over the last 20 years. But it's that, and going to the NFL is just a byproduct of what's gone on in this building and in this stadium and in this state. You know, it's unique to have the college team. There's only one in the state. And so all of that, you know, some people are, well, there's pressure with it. That's the fun part. If you want to play at the highest level and coach at the highest level, you're going to have the pressure at the highest level. Get comfortable with it. It happens. It's a byproduct of what you're doing. And so the excitement for me is to come here and compete to win Big Ten championships. Because if you win that in the 2 major leagues right now, you're playing for whatever you want to play for.
So when you talk about recruiting, you know, how would you describe your approach to recruiting and building relationships with recruits?
As far as recruiting goes, it changed a lot. You know, I got 4 kids, and I got a son who's a freshman in college, a lacrosse player. You know, Cooper went through this, and it's a completely different game. But as a parent, you think about, what does a parent want? You try and put yourself in the kid's shoes. I try and keep up with tech. I try and keep up with music. You know, I'm a country music guy, but I'll listen to some Rod Wave. I figured that out about 2 years ago. The long story there is you got to kind of relate to where they're at and what they're looking for. But I don't think you waver to go get the kid. You find the kid who's looking for what we provide. And, you know, it wasn't even public yet. And I had 2 kids reach out, Coach, I heard, yeah. So you have good relationships with kids, but you also have to have the product. You go back to the offensive line here, kids want to come to Wisconsin to play football. Well, let's get the Wisconsin kids that need to be here and then find the best in the country to come out of that. You know, I work with Casey every day, Raubach, and he talks about my crew had 2 or 3 really good Wisconsin players. And Gibby was from Indianapolis, and guys from, you got to go to the different spots to find some of those guys to add the elite level. But it starts right here. And, you know, back to recruiting, I think about it as a parent, I think about it as a kid. I recruit a family, not just a kid, whether that's his grandma and grandpa, whether that's his whatever's. He has to know what he's getting here. Because in all the other stuff in today's college football world, it does matter, but you get the ones that are supposed to be here, and when they get here, they stay. You know, if there's anything I was proud about what we did at Vanderbilt is 5 seniors, 4 juniors, 4 sophomores, 4 freshmen. We didn't have guys leave. They knew the plan, you're honest with them, you talk about the plan and recruiting, you don't make it sound sexier than it is, because it's hard as a freshman. I don't care where you go. And if you kids know you're gonna work through them with that part, the good stuff's easy. So.
When you're recruiting, how much of an obstacle is that fourth offensive line coach from 4 years, particularly with the accelerated recruiting calendar and guys making decisions earlier in the process?
You know, I think parents and kids ask that, but as a coach, you got to address that. I mean, you got to anticipate what a kid's thinking, and so you just address it. Hey, fourth guy. You look at my track record. I have moved a little bit, but I've never been like a one and done guy. Like, I'm in it to build it. My dad was a high school coach that never took a winning program. And I think as a kid, I watched a guy go build a community. You know, in high school, the whole community follows it. Just at this level, it's a whole state. You know, it's around the country. And you got to embrace that community to get a feel with those kids, with the players. I think if you address things early, here's what we're doing. You got to show them the vision. They got to believe it, not just tell it to them. I mean, a lot of guys tell them what they want to do. Well, everybody wants to win. How are you going to do it with me? And what's my part in it? That's kind of, you just address those potential issues ahead of time.
What excites you about working with Phil Longo and coaching within his offense?
So at Western Illinois, early in my career, it was really my first Division I job. Ted Schlafke was our offensive coordinator, Stevens Point kid. And Ted was like a Longo disciple, played for Phil at Duluth, very successful quarterback. And so I got a taste of coming from Iowa, Fort Hays, Winona State, the places I'd been, we'd lined up and we'd hammered people, and it was, you know, Ted opened it up. Really the first time I'd been a part of it. No huddle, we're using code words, we're using, so it forced me to open my mind a little bit to get the same teachings up front in the line of script. 5 guys blocking the same way. You had to look at rules and understand things, and it made me a better coach, which really opened the doors for Rutgers as the next stop. And then everywhere you've gone, whether it's 4 wide's a different world. That's probably not ever going to be me, but the 11 and 12 personnel potential, you just got to understand space and grass. And in this day and age, that's how you score points. You know, we can line up and hammer you. There's a time to do that, but there's also, like, you got to play football, and the game has built around receivers and running backs and line play has gotten less and less important in high school, so it's harder to find them. You also there's more skill kids out there, and how do you find them? You don't just line up behind 15 guys. So I think was my intro to Phil a little bit. I knew who he was. We interacted a little bit there, but he's a guy who has a proven track record, you know, recruiting and developing quarterbacks. And what's the most important position in college football these days? Quarterback. So as a coach, looking like a recruit, man, what am I going to get out of Wisconsin? I get to coach offensive line at Wisconsin, and I get to work with a guy who's a proven quarterback developer. What else is there? You know what I mean? And you got a head coach. I like working for defensive head guys. They're a little more aggressive. They're a little more banging at practice. Well, you have to hit to get better as a lineman. So I think everything checked my boxes here that I was excited about.
I know it's still early, but what do you think about your room? It looks like you have some experience, obviously, with Jack and Riley and Jake, but there's just a ton of young players in that room.
I'm jacked. And because of that, in 3 weeks, I've watched guys that are great leaders, that love to work. And that's the secret to an O-line room. They love to work. You know, Saturday, I'm gone on a junior day last week. They're out there. They had breakfast in the O-line room. Now I had to go clean some donuts and some stuff up and teach them how to clean their room up. But I mean, they had all the stuff. They had their meal before they worked. They went out and worked. There was no assignment, and they went for about 45 minutes. And it was work from what I heard. The strength coaches saw them. But just that mentality, they're used to that. You know, the older guys, and it's everywhere, but they feel the pressure to not let go of what's happened here over the past. There's tradition in that room. So now it's on them. Just like the young guy, we talk about that. Your legacy is what you do as an old guy here. You lay the groundwork. You either keep it going, make it better, or it drops. There's some pressure with that. Well, that's part of being an old guy. I love the room right now. The young guys, man, there's some talented kids. There's some windows in there now with some loss and things like that. So we got some gaps to fill and have some young guys to get ready early, but that's why you do this long enough. You've done that before somewhere. You know, you've had to get a freshman ready or a redshirt freshman, and you know, maybe they're not quite ready, but who is until you throw them in there? And then as a coach, it's your job to build his confidence, like to hold the older guys accountable and kind of lead the right way. So it's a good balance. I think, my mom was a 40-year special ed teacher. My stepmom was a counselor. My dad was a teacher. A classroom's going to have 20 different people. You got to teach it 20 different ways, and they all got to improve. So I think that's what excites me about the young guys too.
AJ, I don't know how much film we've been able to watch of the last season, the last few seasons,
Yeah.
but overall, what do you think's been missing from this group? Like, because they've had good games, maybe not the consistency
Yeah.
that Wisconsin's used to. What do you think's been missing?
If I was to pinpoint anything missing, because we watched all the cut-ups the past month. So I've seen about everything in the games. I watched bowl practice with some of the young guys. If anything, it's maybe and you mentioned earlier, 4 coaches in 4 years. It's that confidence of, hey, just trying to make sure I'm doing this right. By the end of the season, they ran the outsides, the wide zone really well. They ran the power play really well. There's a lot of things we did really well, and that's what, as a new coach, you got to acknowledge what's been done good here, so they know they're a good group. And then here's the couple things we can fix. There's some schematic little wrinkles that I think you can clean up. There's fundamental things that we can clean up in pass pro at times. But the biggest one is just building that confidence in them to where they take the field with a swagger. When people come to Madison or we go on the road, you're putting on a show up front. And everybody's coming to watch the O-line play. And if you think with that mentality, now I'm saying that's our own room. I'm not saying that's the offense. But they got to take the field. These 80,000 people are here to see us. They're here to watch us put a show on. And I think that's every position group should think that way. But that confidence to that level has to be built in. But that's practice. It's training. You got to get all that done to play with that truly.
You're clearly high energy. Is that a good way to describe it? Do you feel like that's one of your strengths?
I would say when I'm on, I'm on. And when I have downtime, my family will tell you I watch Netflix with the best of them and lay around and relax. But the guys have already figured that out a little bit. As a player, I did not like wasting time in the facility, out of the facility, in the facility. So if we're going to work, we're going to work. And if we're not, we're not. And like today, Coach, we got breakfast is about, well, guys, you were done 5 minutes ago, get going. But there's a time to work and then a time to shut it off. I probably operate the same way.
There have been offensive line coaches here who have stressed coaching multiple positions, cross-training, others who believed in just one. What's your philosophy on that? And as a bigger point, just since we're getting to know you, what are the biggest principles you want to instill in this group?
I think historically, start with the games. Like you get to game day, you get your 5 starters. It's your job to put the guys out there that you trust, the guys that are ready. If we're doing it right and we're training it right, there should be 6, 7, and 8 that are ready to go, whether it's a swing tackle, swing guard. I do think where college football's changing, I've gotten better at it for about 8 years now. If you prove in practice you're ready to play, and when I talk to those 5 starters, because they're the ones playing next to you, it's not me. If they trust you, you're going to get some reps in the game. I think that builds your confidence. It makes sure you're preparing every week, like, oh man, I might get in. And if you're preparing that way, you're going to get better. It's the guys that never get a rep. They're, oh, why would I study this? I'm not getting in this week. And I think that's a buzzkill in a room. You want everybody with that growth mindset. And so for me, I won't even say cross-train. As a young guy, I'd like to put you at one position, either right or left, tackle, guard, center, get through spring ball in your first fall camp. After that, we have a good feel, can you play the other side? It's funny how some guys' brains work. Some are right and left, but they can only play tackle. Guard is like a whole new world. Other guys, they can play right guard and right tackle. Man, anything in a left-handed stance throws them off. So I got to get that feel as we get into practice and we do a little more but I am huge into cross-train, 5 best, 6, 7, and 8 are ready to go. If the 6th guy happens to be some young buck, well, he's going to go play that spot that he knows, and those old guys that play a lot, we can move them around a little bit. And I think that's, you got to put the best guys out there. You're in it to win it now. This isn't JV football, so they have to be ready to go.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.